Yo, what's going on, guys? It's Rage, by the way, back here with another New World video. Today we're going to be diving into my personal favorite tank build I've been rocking with since Void Gauntlet was released. As soon as I saw Void Gauntlet, a part of me thought this would be really good for a self-sustaining tank. So I decided to try a very off-meta build for a tank. This build is all about doing damage and healing yourself for damage you've done. This is not a normal experience of holding right click until you run out of stamina. This build requires a good amount of game knowledge and understanding on boss and enemy mechanics for it to work properly. Having the correct gear and stat setups are a big must, especially when it comes to certain abilities we go into. With all that being said, let's dive into the vampire build. Let's start off with stats and weapon builds. This is what I try to run personally. 50 strength, X amount of dex, 150 int, X amount of focus, and 200 plus constitution. First, with 50 strength, we get 5% increased damage to melee light attacks. This fits well into what we're trying to accomplish with the self-sustaining part of this build. If you don't want to go strength, dex is also a really good way to run this build. 50 dex will net you 5% increased crit chance, which can be very good if you're running a decent amount of crit chance gear. 150 int is baseline, as we need the 50% elemental damage to help boost our Void Gauntlet up a bit. Your focus is up to you and what you have naturally. I wouldn't drop any points into it, but if you acquire gear that has focus on it and can fit the build, it's not a bad stat. It'll increase some of your healing output on abilities with the Void Gauntlet, so it's not completely useless. As a tank, we obviously need a bit of constitution. I think 200 should be absolutely baseline, as 20% increase to armor as a heavy wearer gives you a significant boost. I notice a huge difference when I equip gear that puts me under 200 mark and I don't receive the 20% armor bonus. All right, now let's move on to the weapon builds. The Rapier is going to be our main weapon for this build. We run a lot of good perks on our armor and weapon that makes this weapon absolutely crazy for tanking. Tondo, Flurry, and Riposte are our main abilities. The two biggest abilities here are Flurry and Riposte. Because of a perk called Leeching Flurry, we're able to restore a ton of health on every successful hit of Flurry. Riposte also carries a ton ability when a Carnelian gem is equipped, which helps us maintain threat and keep enemies together. Pause the video here to look at every ability or take a screenshot. The Void Gauntlet is going to be our secondary weapon. It will be used primarily for buffing and healing. Oblivion, Petrifying Scream, and Essence Rupture will be our three abilities we take. All of these abilities buff and heal us and our teammates. Petrifying Scream is a very good ability to run in this build, as it helps us root our enemies and gives us a nice fortify buff when we're able to get the last ability in the tree. Pause and take a screenshot now if needed. I would have loved to talk about every ability and perk in the tree, but I wanted to keep this video at a decent length. If you have any questions about any of the talents we went to, go ahead and drop a comment below. I'll also be linking the builds down in the description. Now let's talk about armor and weapon perks. First off, we have Keen Tondo. Keen Tondo increases crit chance by X amount % against targets affected by Tondo's bleeds. This is very effective for us, as we have a lot of talents that increase with crits that we make, and with leeching it scales us even further ahead when we crit. This also increases crit chance for teammates as well. This ability can be used as an AoE if placed correctly, making it very effective for big groups as well. Leeching Flurry is our next gear perk. Leeching Flurry makes it so each hit returns X% of health back from the damage we do. This is going to be our main perk for this build. It is absolutely necessary that if we run this build, we need this perk. This returns a lot of health to us, and with a good enough set, we can reset the cooldown of Flurry almost immediately. This in turn lets us spam out Flurries and never drop below a certain amount of health. Sundering Riposte is really niche. Sundering Riposte puts Rend on a target. Rend reduces damage absorption of a target by X% for 10 seconds. This is really good for kill times and helping you burn bosses and enemies down quicker, as it affects your entire group. This is also super niche, like I said, as sometimes it can be hard to land a well-placed riposte and get the effect 100% of the time. With enough practice, it becomes way easier to time certain enemies and bosses to get the maximum efficiency out of this perk. All right, now for the weapon perks. I believe it's absolutely necessary to have Refreshing Move on your Rapier. Rapier already has a lot of cooldown reducing talents built into it, and with Refreshing Move, it becomes even deadlier. With well-aimed light attacks, we can instantly refresh every ability on our Rapier. It's almost too easy to have all your abilities on cooldown all the time with this perk. With this, we can easily spam out Flurries, Tondos, and AoE taunt with Riposte constantly. This is an instant slot in for me when it comes to the Rapiers I run for the Vamp build. Void Gauntlet is a tricky one. Because of Void Gauntlet not having any built-in taunts, I think it's necessary to grab Hated for it. Hated quite literally increases your threat while using your Void Gauntlet. This is 100%, and it's very easy to lose threat off enemies if you keep your VG out for too long. The way I use it is right at the beginning to dump my abilities and then swap to the Rapier. I found that with Hated, it lets me hold long enough to be able to switch. If you have a bow player or a mage in your group, it'll be ridiculously hard to hold threat at the start without it. All right, now for jewelry. There are a lot of different options we can go for here, and it's honestly up to you how you go about it. We can go more tanky, more healy, or more damage. For me personally, I like to go more tanky, as the build is still being theory crafted and changed by myself every day. So I like to run the more tanky options for now until I can figure out ways to swap things out and potentially go for more damage. Some of the easiest pieces to grab right away are Ill-Gotten Gains and Infinity Crystal. Ill-Gotten Gains is a drop from a super easy boss to farm, and Infinity Crystal can be acquired from a quest chain in Shattered Mountains. Both these items bring a good amount of perks that can keep you healthy as the fight goes on. Both were instant slot-ins for me until I can find some legendary pieces that can do more than both these, but I think it'll be a while before I replace them. For our ring, I decided to grab one with leeching on it. Leeching was recently buffed by a substantial amount, so I figured it was a good time to try it. I have noticed without it, I can feel my self-sustainability not being as good, but I'm not sure if it's enough to be scared of not having it. For this reason, do some looking around, and if you can find a ring with some decent stats and abilities on it, I'd say go for it. I've already given a little explanation of how the build works while talking about the build's internal core, but here's a little brief rundown / rotation. Start the fight with your Void Gauntlet out, group up the mobs, or run to the boss. Drop Oblivion and Petrifying Scream if it's an AoE pull. Throw an Essence Rupture at the end if you're fighting a boss. Switch to Rapier, immediately riposte, even if you're not countering an ability. This will activate your taunt and give you immediate threat. After that, spam Tondo to 3 stacks and Flurry in between. With the right set of gear, you should be able to spam Tondo and Flurry really quick. Mix in Light Attacks as well to get our cooldowns to refresh. Then I switch back to the Void Gauntlet when my cooldowns are up and I feel like my threat is built up enough for me to switch over without an issue. Drop everything again, rinse and repeat. If you're doing an AoE pull, you want to position yourself to hit as many enemies as you can with your abilities, especially your Rapier, as it drastically reduces your cooldowns. Fun fact, most abilities and talents that say they refresh your cooldowns on hit count if you hit multiple enemies at once. So if you hit multiple enemies with a light attack while your Rapier has refreshing move, it'll stack the percent and reduce it even further. That pretty much sums up my vampire tank build. This build was super fun to make and I'm still experimenting on it as well. If you have any questions or want to chat about potential changes, I'm always up for a good discussion in the comments. I also stream regularly on my Twitch channel that can be found in the description below. Make sure to come by, say what's up, and we can chat live about the build or anything New World related. I appreciate you guys watching the video and we'll see you in the next one. She's doing her thing. It's gonna take a second to get aggro.
He actually got slingshot. He burned out to the edge over here, ready on my thing, and then got slingshot to death.
Nice.
So I figured out.
Rage, you're dying. You're dead. You're dead.
Okay.
He couldn't move.